On today's episode of PDubs Arcade Loft, we're going to take a look at the Arcade1Up OutRun seated racing cabinet. Although we're missing the Sega logo on the side panel versus the original arcade, Arcade1Up has done a fantastic job of mirroring what this cabinet looked like in its original form. The side panel artwork is beautiful and well done. Kudos to Arcade1Up as always. Now, although Arcade1Up is going to sell this as a seated version, which I have right here paid for out of my own pocket, as well as a stand-up version, there's definitely, when it comes to the seated version, that bench, opportunities for improvement. The cabinet itself, I'm actually quite surprised they were able to pull off a racing cabinet for $500 or less, but taking a look at the bench, the artwork on the bench, coupled with the exposed screws, it's just not there. It's not impressive enough. I mean, this cabinet, in all honesty, looks kind of kooky from the outside looking in, but once you actually kind of plant your butt there in the middle and get yourself in the cockpit, it's actually a pretty good looking cabinet once you're seated down staring at it. I mean, if the back of this bench as well as the sides of the bench are supposed to make you think that this is what the rear of a vehicle looks like, definitely minimal effort was put into this bench design. Not only does the artwork on the sides and rear of the machine resemble nothing like a vehicle, the cushion itself for you to sit on to hopefully spend 30 minutes to hours plus playing on your arcade machine is one of the cheapest and most awful cushions ever designed. Very, very uncomfortable. Now, I think the bench and the cabinet, I think kids as well as the ladies, I think they're really going to enjoy getting in here and playing some games. I think they're going to get really excited. But us grown men, guys, I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. Any grown man that sits in this thing, you look like a total doofus. There is just no way to look cool sitting in this thing. You're gonna look like a total doofus in your game room. But then again, some people might not mind that. But this definitely, the seated version, just has too many opportunities for improvement on the bench. In all honesty, guys, probably the most potential this cabinet has is as a stand-up version, which they will be releasing next year. There are a lot of pros to waiting until this becomes a stand-up cabinet. This cabinet has a lot of potential to be a stand-up cabinet. When it comes to the bench, unfortunately, there's just too many issues for me to recommend purchasing this as a seated version. The bench is too low to the ground for grown adults, as well as the artwork on the bench, the exposed screws, the improper padding, the lack of quality design on the bench is just not good. Although I have my own personal issues with the bench, which might come down to user preference, when it comes to the cabinet itself, I'm actually quite surprised and pleased with what Arcade1Up could accomplish with a $500 budget. This cabinet is definitely going to pop in your arcade and gaming room. It's bright, it's beautiful, it's colorful, and heck, it's got a steering wheel on it. We have a steering wheel, a shifter, and yes, we have gas pedals. We have a racing cabinet at last. The steering wheel does have plenty of clearance behind it for you to access the volume toggle and the on-off switch. The overall dashboard design here looks really, really good on the control panel. You got your cheap little green start button. Of course, the steering wheel itself has got this horrible Arcade1Up logo. And then, of course, but here's what's the most important part is the steering wheel is really good. Has a great tension to it, has a great rubber feel to it. I actually think they put a lot of effort behind the steering wheel. The buttons themselves are your typical Arcade1Up buttons. You all know I'm not a fan of those. I wish they'd put better buttons in, but because it's a driving cabinet, I'm actually going to let the buttons slide because we hardly use them. The shifter itself is kind of a plastic, cheaper type shifter with a cheap turbo button on it. Honestly, it's not that great, but because you mostly drive automatic in these games and you maybe flip low to high, it works really well, does the job. Now, I absolutely love this board, this ridge here on the dashboard. This is new for Arcade1Up, first time we've seen a cabinet with this design. Gives you a great map of what races are coming up next, and also a great place to put your cell phone or maybe even a tasty beverage. I absolutely love this. When it comes to the bezel surrounding the monitor, now obviously this bezel doesn't match the original arcade cabinet, but it does match the artwork design on the entire front of the cabinet when you're sitting in it. Honestly, looks pretty good in my opinion. And I absolutely love the marquee. Arcade1Up did a great job. This marquee, the colors, the lighting, everything is absolutely perfect on this marquee. They did a great job here. Really impressed. Now, although I really like the steering wheel, like really like it, and although I enjoy the shifter, I think the shifter's just fine, even though the shifter's not top quality. The one big area of concern for me is this is a racing cabinet, and we should go all out when it comes to the controls on this cabinet. If you're going to reduce costs or do anything cheaply, I mean, you really should do that elsewhere where you can. But obviously the pedals here are just a cheap plasticky pedals. They work fine, they do the job, but again, there's a question of longevity. How long will these last? What happens if somebody pushes on them wrong? What happens if they accidentally snap or something of that nature? I mean, when you take a look at it, when you see how kind of flimsy they are, although they have a decent amount of tension to them, I actually honestly worry about this potentially breaking, especially for folks who are going to use the cabinet frequently, or if you have children in your home and children are really rough on things. I just don't know for sure how long these are going to last. So when it comes to the pedals, I wish the pedals had a lot more stronger bracing to them, stronger feel to them, something to make you feel like, yeah, I can play this thing for hours upon hours and it's not going to break. But the good news is the cord that plugs into the control deck for these is super long. So if you wanted to, even if you have the seated cabinet, you could put this on a riser with the pedals in front of the riser, and you don't need to keep it as a seated arcade cabinet if you so choose to. Now once you plug it in and turn it on, as you can see, that marquee when illuminated is gorgeous. I mean, I can't get enough of it. I think it's great. And of course, after you turn it on, you'll notice that Arcade1Up is sticking with the one-page menu system for accessing all 4 games included on the cabinet, as well as the settings menu. Navigating the menus is super easy using the steering wheel, as well as using the gear shift in order to get down to the settings toggle for each particular game. This does not have force feedback, and it's not a free spinning wheel. The wheel only turns so far in either direction. And of course, using that gear shift to go down to the settings menu. I absolutely love what Arcade1Up has done here with the settings menu. Each game has different settings. You can adjust the difficulty, set it to easy for the kids, all that kind of stuff. Turn scan lines on and off, reset the high scores, all that kind of stuff, demo sounds, things of that nature. Absolutely love and hope that Arcade1Up continues to give us settings options on every game moving forward. And of course, because all 4 games have slightly different controls, what's really cool, of course, is these awesome loading screens that tell you exactly what you need to do to play each particular game. Now, the main reason we buy these arcade cabinets is not just because they're pretty, is, well, how well do they play? And sure enough, all 4 games play wonderfully on this cabinet. Very impressed. I mean, OutRun, you have to be a fan of the OutRun series to truly enjoy OutRun. I, of course, have always loved the OutRun games, and I'm having a blast playing these games on this particular cabinet. The glare you see on the screen is just from the camera I'm using pointed at the angle towards the machine. The screen itself is one of the newer Bowie monitors, the 3rd generation Arcade1Up monitors. It's bright, it's colorful, the emulation is great, the steering wheel works fantastic with these games. No complaints with that, as well as the gear shifter, no complaints with that as well. And of course, the pedals do the job too, the brake and the gas pedal. Everything does the job. My only concern, of course, is will those pedals last the test of time? But everything else is working great, and it's a fun experience. So although I look like a doofus sitting in this thing, I do really enjoy playing it. My only concern from a gameplay and emulation perspective is that the steering wheel is so sensitive on the default settings out of the box that when you try to navigate to your letters, like I'm trying to get to the letter D in order to put dub, D-U-B, for your high scores, that steering wheel, once you get it to move on the high score screen, it really moves on you. It jumps a bunch of letters, and you're just not able to get your high score initials put in correctly or easily. I mean, not only do we have the classic OutRun on here, but we also have Turbo OutRun, which uses that turbo button on the gear shift. This game plays, looks, and sounds wonderful. But out of all 4 games on this cabinet, although OutRun, Turbo OutRun, and Outrunners are some really, really good classic games, I'll tell you what, I've really fallen in love with playing Power Drift on here. In all honesty, out of the 4 games, I think Power Drift is my favorite. Definitely check it out if you have this cabinet. There's no doubt that this cabinet has a lot of modding potential behind it as well. One of the easiest mods you could do is make it look a little bit more like the real OutRun cabinet. And thanks to my buddy Tyler over at ArcadeGraphix.com, he did send me, you can get, and I'll have links in the video description below, Sega logo graphics to put on the sides of the cabinet, which look fantastic. And not only that, he also has the Ferrari logo sticker, which you can use to replace that Arcade1Up sticker on the steering wheel. That way this will look more like the real steering wheel on the arcade machine. Really cool. And of course he has the actual bezel recreation. So this will match the original design of the cabinet versus the red bezel that Arcade1Up provided. I honestly don't mind the Arcade1Up bezel, but since Tyler was kind enough to send this to me, I'll go ahead and use that. Now you're saying, well, PDubs, looks like you got some extras there. Well, Tyler did send me an extra set of the Sega stickers, the Ferrari sticker, as well as the bezel graphic, which is really cool. Thanks, Tyler, because on our 5,000 subscriber giveaway show coming up soon, this will be one of the many things I give away on that episode. Hope you guys tune in for that. Overall, guys, the question is should you run out to buy OutRun? In my opinion, this is a great cabinet, especially for modding purposes. If you wanted to make a sit-down, full-fledged racing cabinet, there's a lot of potential there. When it comes to just buying it and playing the games themselves all emulate, sound, and play wonderfully. The steering wheel's good, the gear shifter is good, the pedals, they do the job. There's just a question is, will they last? Overall, I'm very pleased with this cabinet if it was a stand-up cabinet. I think this whole bench concept of seated arcade cabinets, I think Arcade1Up can do a better job on these. I think they can push the areas of innovation and come up with something cooler than what we've seen on the OutRun cabinet and the Star Wars cabinet. For now, I wouldn't recommend getting this as a seated version. But definitely, guys, if you like racing games, if you like racing cabinets, this is definitely a good attempt in that market by Arcade1Up, and go get your stand-up cabinet once that becomes available next year in 2021. Make sure you guys let me know your honest opinions, comments, and feedback in the comments below. I would love to see that. And as always, guys, make sure you give us a thumbs up on the way out, especially if you enjoyed the video. And as always, guys, thank you for subscribing.